start with this. The Big 12 has released the schedules for the first 3 weeks of the season. These are games. Everybody knew the games, but there were now, of course, questions about, well, where are they going to play, et cetera? Where is it going to be? And there's that first week. Kent State and USF will play on August 31st. They're going to play late in the week. And then you have Kansas in a night game that same day. And then the first Saturday, September 2nd, Colorado TCU will be on Fox. You'll have down the road Oklahoma, 11 o'clock on ESPN. There are the games, Texas Rice 2:30. That's on Fox. Baylor playing Texas State. That game's on ESPN+. Texas Tech, Wyoming on CBS at 6:30. Brigham Young home against Sam Houston. That game on FS1.
Yeah, that's a strange spot for Texas Tech. Wyoming was the first thing I thought when I saw that. But there's a lot interesting here. Colorado, this is not Big 12 related, but Colorado's first two games are the big noon kickoff, which I'll talk about in the top five later. But if you don't get to stick around for that, I do think it's interesting that Fox and everybody is going to try to buy early on Deion Sanders before whatever happens with Colorado's roster happens, because it's very likely that they have an average at best season, given that there are 50 some odd transfers and it's the first year in a Power 5 conference. But that first two games that Colorado at Big Noon, TCU and then Nebraska the next week are both the Big Noon kickoff on Fox.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, it's we'd have to I don't have some great, big thoughts on, the channels they're on or anything like that. I mean, it's interesting to look at. It's interesting to see, just how it all lines up originally. And, on the Colorado point, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see if people get Deion fatigue or if they already started to get that a little bit, because we have heard so much about him and he hasn't coached a game, at Colorado just yet. So depending on how those outcomes go, I think that's where the direction of the coverage probably goes. Colorado will be a story all year no matter what. But if he goes 1-1 or 2-0, which would be shocking in some ways if, he would have beat TCU, in my opinion. That would obviously be massive for that program, and we would never hear the end of it, until, they went on a 4-game losing streak or something. But, yeah, I mean, he's going to have the world in his palms at the start of the year, and depending on how they play, they might get even more attention as it goes along. So that's a big spotlight, but not surprising. TCU Colorado's a much more interesting game than it was last year when it was a god-awful game from what I remember. I mean, TCU didn't look very good in that game. Colorado clearly wasn't very good. You never would have suspected, based on just the parts of it that I remember watching, that TCU's about to go on a run and win a title, or win a potentially a Big 12 title and play for a national title. But teams get better as the season goes along. Their quarterback switched up because of the injury, and Colorado never really changed much. They were just bad, which is why Deion is where he is. But Nebraska will be interesting. So yeah, that Colorado part of it is intriguing, but. Yeah, a lot to unpack just channels and times-wise.
Week 2, there are some very juicy matchups. And starting on Saturday, Utah at Baylor, 11 a.m. on ESPN. It's on ESPN. I've seen some chatter, people upset with the kick times. I'm tired of worrying about kick times. It is what it is. The networks make their decisions. That's where it is. Then, of course, Iowa State. That game's on Fox Sports at 2:30. Oregon, Texas Tech, a night game on Fox Sports. Texas at Alabama, a night game on ESPN that same night. USF and Boise State's a good one. That's UCF, excuse me. UCF. At FS1, that game at night. Oklahoma State at Arizona State with their new head coach. A 9:30 kick on FS1. SMU, Oklahoma. Cincinnati at Pittsburgh. That week will tell you a lot about many of the teams in those games, but also kind of give an idea about what's happening within the Big 12. If they can win some of those and not some, but win a lot of those head-to-heads will be of interest to me.
Yeah, I think to go back to week 1 first, West Virginia, Penn State will obviously be a big game. It's a big opportunity for Neil Brown. I know there's probably not a lot of faith in them doing anything, victoriously, but still, that'll be, an interesting tale right out of the gates for the Mountaineers. UTSA Houston ought to be very interesting as well because UTSA is a good program, and we don't quite know what to expect of Houston. So just wanted to mention that as well from week number 1. I think those are just a couple of other games to keep an eye on. But week 2, can Iowa State finally beat Iowa? It's been hard to come by victories in that rivalry for the Cyclones. So, they're very quiet this offseason in some ways, and I don't know if that's because they're building up to have a big rebound or if they're just sort of hovering where they have been. I don't know, but that's a big opportunity for them, although we saw them, win last year and then it didn't matter, ultimately in the end. So can they kind of get something and build off of it and start to beat Iowa on a regular basis and then, see what that does to the rest of their season? Oregon Tech is going to be fascinating as well. Utah Baylor, as you mentioned, ought to be very interesting. We'll learn a lot about Baylor in that game. Not sure how excited people will be for that 11 a.m. because I've seen some of those early reactions as well. But like you said, like they kick the ball off when they do. You either want to go to the games or you don't. And I don't know where. I saw it with Oklahoma fans for a long time. Like that's been out there for years. As part of their being and moaning about the Big 12 was all these 11 a.m. kickoffs, even though the Big 12 isn't in control. Like you're going to play on ESPN at 11. That's not really their deal, but. That was somehow, an axe to grind against the Big 12. But, they wanted them in that spot because they knew they were going to draw ratings. And if you don't want to be in that 11 a.m. spot, then win some games.
It starts the momentum for the rest of the day if Oklahoma's got the people watching their games. Yeah.
Right. So there was something to that. But I know it's not the most popular thing. But I have seen that crop up over the last year, it seems like, with Baylor fans for some reason, the 11 a.m. And I don't know if it was like that before and I just didn't notice it or if it's just a bit.
It's been
Has
that
it always
way.
been like that?
No, it is. You have a juicy game, and I say that I've said that twice now. Utah Baylor. I don't care if they played at 4 o'clock in the morning to me, but if it's 11 o'clock, it's too early, maybe too hot. If it's 2:30, it's too hot. If it's 6:30, it might be the fact that it's not so. It's still hot, again in September or. I've never understood it. But again, I'm not an alum and a donor, so I go cover the damn game whenever the kickoff is.
Okay, in September in Texas, there is not a time 11, 2:30 or 6 where you're not going to be hot for at least a portion of that day. So that's just what you have to do.
Your armpits will be wet.
Yes, it's what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And I will say this, I think Utah Baylor of that weekend is the best one for 11 o'clock. Absolutely is the best one for 11 o'clock. Utah's the 2-time Pac-12 champion. Baylor is coming off, a 6-7 season. So had Baylor been better last year, then maybe that game goes down a little bit. But, they needed something for the 9:30 window. So
okay, let's stop talking about kick time.
Arizona State.
Please, so, God, yeah. And I know you guys want to, but I just I'm numb to it. I'm numb to it because, that's why we're not. Go to the game, enjoy the game.
I wasn't really trying to make it about that. I'm just saying that, it's just something I've noticed more and more. So anyways, that Texas-Bama is obviously a huge game. UCF, Boise State, Oak State, Arizona State, SMU, Oklahoma, Cincy, Pitt. That's going to be a huge weekend.
Week 3 of the schedule. Now, there are some games that if you get down in the schedule, go down to the one between Pittsburgh at West Virginia. We know all about that rivalry. ABC, 6:30 kick. Brigham Young. I like this one at Arkansas. ESPN2 at the same time. TCU and Houston in a Big 12 game. Will be at 7 o'clock on Fox. And then those are the 3 main games. Wyoming plays Texas Tech to open the year. 2 weeks later, they're on the road against Texas. That game will be on the Longhorn Network. So there's some measuring stick games in the first 3 weeks of the season based on the times, the schedule, and, of course, the matchups.
Hey, the 11 o'clock game on SEC Network is K-State at Mizzou, and I'm sure old school Big 12 fans are looking forward to that one. Graham will have to tell us how good Mizzou's going to be. Probably not the one they want week 3, but should be a fun one, at least old-time rivalry-wise.
So those are the scores, the games, the kickoff times, and much more. So I walked in the studio, and there's